y'all took the class probably about a year and a half ago. That's wild.
Yeah.
Because I was living in a totally different place. I had a different hair color, sort of.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm curious, what does this look like for you today? You talked about some examples of kind of, you know, things that you've seen or things that you took away that had a big impact. But what does that look like as you continue on today? What things for you are still a continuous thread in your mind where you think this is something that I want to keep trying and evolving, and it's already made a really big impact on me. So how do I kind of take it to the next level?
I mean, you want to start, Dylan?
No, you go. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I think, Tara, you and I have talked about having a charter within my department.
Yes.
And kind of that pulling more of that psychological safety within to that charter. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We had a new teammate arrive, and that created its own new sets of almost restarting with psychological safety and and how that has sort of changed the dynamic of the team, where I don't feel like I'm ready to potentially, like, we're still unsettled enough to maybe not have a charter, but maybe this is the best time to start a charter. But I think the charter itself within psychological safety kind of brings back to like the values, and if your whole team agrees on something like that, when things err, it's less about the person and more about the policy, the processes, the values, and the whole reason for this department's existence. That it's not personal. It's more about the work that we produce. And so I think that's sort of how I was hoping. I did introduce psychological safety to my team. They'd heard me in the cohort and talking about it and trying to sprinkle some things in here and there. And so, asking people what they thought of psychological safety, and brought it to a staff meeting. And it was really remarkable to hear folks talk about what they thought about it, what it meant to them. And I was so excited to take that next step to a charter. And then job got in the way, new teammate got in the way, but it's still something I really try to think about as I'm within this organization as a whole. And I was reading over some of the like cheat sheets because I was just like, oh my God, what do I remember about psychological safety? And I'm like, oh, this is sort
of remember more than you think you do.
I do. And I was like, oh, I'm doing all of these things. I'm practicing these things. But
right. Because, well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Annie, with the practicing thing. And I love what you said about, when we recognize where we are, when we build self-awareness, we can actually focus on making amazing experiences for people, as opposed to bumping into each other and exhausting ourselves because we're frustrated or we're feeling shut down or someone's shutting down on us. Like, we can focus on the real problems and actually helping people instead of tripping over each other. And I think for me, like, that's pertinent in any industry. So I love that you're not coming from the tech side, you're coming from the medical side. And it's so funny because that's where I started my journey with this whole thing, was working in healthcare and working in an inbound call center, and then a mental health clinic that was outpatient. And so I think that recognizing that this does impact all of us as humans, no matter where we are. If we could just recognize it's not just a soft skill and it's something that's really crucial, we'd all be better for it, I think. But Dylan,
I love what you were saying, Annie, because it is just lighting me up, because I've been thinking exactly the same thing. That, okay, so I have been primarily using this so far in little incremental ways for myself and individuals that I'm interacting with, which is perfect. It's, using the patterns, seeing what they're like, building a couple of stories about seeing how they work, what kind of difference they can make. Great. So then kind of next, and this is like you talked about, the work can get in the way. So it's where can we fit in an expansion of this?
Yes.
And my thought for the next expansion is for a couple of my teams to go through a rechartering, which I think will be way richer than the last time we chartered. And then I would do, before we do our charter, I'd do an hour or two where we're talking about psychological safety. And again, sharing some of the patterns and thoughts that are, simple and easy to grasp, but most importantly, leading it to a place where everyone's sharing what makes them feel psychologically safe and what takes away from psychological safety, and have that conversation, and then go into chartering. Maybe it's later that day, maybe it's the next day, so that as we're talking about the patterns of how we want to work together, we've just got that shared foundation of what psychological safety means to us. Because then you get it built into those working agreements in the charter, those patterns are going, and that lets the team claim their own psychological safety, much like I, at a personal level, have been working to claim my own psychological safety. I want to change the whole org, but if I can change it for me and then the team can change it for themselves, then it's exciting. We're going in the right direction.